Foldables, they seem to be the newcomer that captivates everyone's attention, and first we have foldable smartphones and now we even have foldable laptops. Many people say that laptops are already foldable, but no, I mean it in a literal sense, as in one single screen that folds in half. And we have done yet another video talking about why I think foldable laptops are the future, but we are not going to talk about it in this video. Here we are only going to talk about how is it actually like to use the Zenbook 17 Fold OLED UX9702. Let's go through a quick rundown of this device to see what it has to offer. Firstly, it's obviously a foldable laptop, and it is a 17.3-inch OLED screen with an aspect ratio of 4:3 and a resolution of 2560 by 1920, and the keyboard sits on top on this side here. I'll just show you some B-roll instead of moving everything all around. And that cuts the resolution in half, making it 1920 by 1280. Interesting, right? There are a bunch of stickers at the back here. One of it is BOE, which literally stands for Best on Earth. They are the manufacturer of the foldable OLED screen used in this laptop. And from our color accuracy test, we did something different this time around. So we split it into a total of 3 different tests. Left, right, and then right smack in the middle of where the crease is supposed to be. Surprisingly, the color accuracy is very consistent throughout our tests, and it is virtually covering 100% of both sRGB and DCI-P3 color gamuts, and about 94% of Adobe RGB. And I think that's just very good. But using the Zenbook Fold is very weird due to the scaling issue. Honestly, scaling on Windows is a lot better than on a Mac, and we'll talk about that in a future video. And I think that the scaling issue that I found here stems from how the foldable display is detected by the software. In my mind, I thought that the display reports 2 different modes. Mode 1 is when the keyboard is seated on the laptop, hence the resolution is at 1920 by 1280, and then mode 2 is what we're using now, is when the keyboard is removed from the device, maximizing the display. Turns out ASUS used one hardware ID for both modes, so this poses an issue for Windows scaling. You see, in the display settings menu, you can only select the percentage that you want to scale, but for both modes. I prefer to use mode 1 in 125% scaling and mode 2 in 150% scaling, but since the software doesn't allow this kind of scaling, I just stuck with 150% for both modes, making everything way too big for mode 1 but just right for mode 2. It's just very weird. I really wish ASUS finds a way to scale differently between 2 modes, and that would be just a huge boon in terms of user experience. And I also realized that yet another issue, it's a small one actually. The brightness slider doesn't seem to be linear, it seems to be logarithmic, because from our colorimeter, if we just adjust a few percentage in the brightness slider, yeah, the display brightness just goes up way too much. The volume slider on the other hand, it's pretty weird. Even at just 10% volume, it's already quite loud, so you can imagine playing music at 50% volume. And speaking of that, the speakers of this foldable laptop. Yeah, I should call it foldable laptop. Yeah, the speaker of this device is also pretty good, so have a listen here. And then comes the keyboard. This is a weird one because this seems to be a proprietary keyboard made only for the Zenbook 17 Fold. So it has a few special features to accommodate for this kind of device. Firstly is the magnet that sits on the bottom here so that the keyboard will snap onto the laptop, so it will trigger mode 1 by just chopping the screen into half. However, the only method that this keyboard sends keystroke data to the laptop is via Bluetooth. That means it is powered by an internal battery and it is to be charged but charged separately because it has its own USB Type-C port, and you cannot use it in wired mode because I tried that and that didn't work as well. I do understand the dilemma here though. If ASUS made pogo pins for the keyboard to be connected via cable, then switching between wireless and wired mode will be not that smooth because of how Windows works. So yeah, you will still need a constant Bluetooth connection so that you can transition between mode 1 and mode 2 smoothly. With that said though, I do think that ASUS can still include either a wireless charging coil or pogo pins for charging only, just like how the Apple Pencil is supposed to be working with their iPads. There is a redeeming point here though, since the keyboard can connect up to 2 different devices, and you can also switch between those 2 devices by just pressing Fn plus F9 or F10. The keyboard itself is also very nice to type on, and for whatever reason ASUS made the keyboard to be similar to an ASA profile keycap, because its shape, even though it's not obvious, is actually having those kind of dish shape. If you're typing on this keyboard while using the laptop in mode 1, then it will definitely flex a lot around the middle part because it is hollow underneath, and I would think that's just an inherent issue with this kind of form factor, so you can't really do much about it. Also, one more thing to highlight about this keyboard is that there is no backlighting, so you will need to be a touch typist if you want to use this laptop in the dark. I also want to talk about the kickstand for a while. We did mess around with the prototype version 6 months ago, and at that time I would say that the main concern from me is about the kickstand. Luckily, ASUS improved on that kickstand and made it super solid, but unluckily the kickstand only opens and closes, so you only have one angle to use. For me personally, I would say that this kickstand tilts the entire screen way too far backwards, and yeah, the angle is just way too extreme, and unfortunately there's just no way around it. Carrying the entire setup though is something that I really wish the Zenbook 17 Fold will improve for the next generation, because it also comes with this kind of PU leather pouch similar to how the laptop's PU leather feel, but I don't really like this pouch because it's just a bit too tight, and the 2 side flanges here, they curve inwards, making it even more difficult to put the device inside. And which orientation should you face when putting it into the pouch? That is also a question that I want to ask, because if the hinge faces downwards, then taking out the Zenbook Fold is going to be really difficult because the metallic part is just way too slippery. So if I put it in that way, then I just invert the entire pouch to pour out the device. If we put the Zenbook Fold inside the pouch with the hinge facing upwards, then the tightness of the pouch made it impossible to fit my fingers inside to grab the device and pull it out. I also ended up inverting the entire pouch and pour out the device. I mean, come to think of it, the pouch is actually kind of pointless because it doesn't offer any additional compartments or maybe just storage that's slim enough for a Bluetooth mouse or maybe some paper documents, or even a separate compartment to store the power brick. Yeah, maybe just include something like an iPad case where there's an additional flap to flap from the back to the front and then attach magnetically. That would be a lot more handy. What about the performance then? Well, this device is definitely not made for gaming. It is powered by the Intel Core i7-1250U, coupled with 16 gigs of LPDDR5 RAM, and it is sufficient enough for my type of usage. Spotify, jumping through multiple Chrome tabs back and forth, and with some YouTube in the mix, and surprisingly, you can still technically play some games on the Zenbook 17 Fold OLED thanks to the Iris Xe integrated graphics. And I mean, look at Genshin Impact, it runs. Before you ask, I also tried folding the device when the game is running, and surprisingly the game didn't crash, but the game got squished, so everything just looked fat and short. And before I forget, the ports, it has 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports and that's it. Depending on how you look at it, there is always one port at the quote-unquote top of the device and one more at the quote-unquote side of the device. And you will need to sacrifice one of those ports for charging because that's actually how you just charge the device, plug it into the USB Type-C port. And luckily, the battery life of this device can last for about 8 hours easily, depending on what kind of usage that you have. For me, I just keep on switching between mode 1 and mode 2, sleeping quite a few times, And yeah, totaling up to 8 hours of usage, that's actually fantastic. So it is clear that the Zenbook 17 Fold OLED is not perfect. There are some glaring issues and annoyances that I think can be improved for a better user experience. And despite all of those things that I complained about, I do find myself loving this kind of form factor, as in the core idea of a foldable laptop. But at the price of $14,999, I think it's just very steep. But considering that this is the quote-unquote first generation of such a device, I think ASUS is going through what Samsung went through for the first generation of the Galaxy Fold. Remember, the first generation Galaxy Fold was expensive, and it eventually went down in price as years go by, while also improving the product in both hardware and software. And I really wish ASUS will go through such a phase as well, because this is a good product. I'll just tell you that. ASUS did say that they are committed to the Fold lineup of laptops, and they will have a generation 2 of this device. And I genuinely am looking forward to what they have in mind to make the Fold 2 better. Are they gonna call the Zenbook Fold 2? I don't know. However, yeah, good device. Obviously flawed, but Gen 2, I'm really looking forward to it.